Thank you, Mitch.
Yeah. So I bet you the History Channel is like one of your favorite. I could just, if Tom watches TV, it's got to be like the History Channel.
It is.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I find myself recording stuff on the History Channel.
Well, I'll tell you what was cool was when I was doing research for this record, I came across a guy named Kenny King, who's a local historian in Logan County, and he took me to Blair Mountain and took me up on the mountain and we unearthed some bullet shells and so forth, some artifacts from the battle. And actually, Reach Behe from the Tribune Review, he and Andy Russell, a fellow photographer at the Trib, they drove 4 hours down there with me to do a story.
Wow.
And Kenny took us up there and showed us a bunch of things, and it wasn't a year later, they put out a show on the History Channel, program called Hillbilly, The Real Story. It was narrated by Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, when they did the whole Battle of Blair Mountain, it was Kenny who took them up onto the mountain. And so there he was on the History Channel. And,
wow.
Yeah,
that's cool.
My family, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I started immersing myself in trying to learn as much as I could about the whole history of that.
I hope I can introduce you someday. He's a great guy, great man.
I think one is called Harlan County,
Right.
that documentary you probably have seen now. And yeah, there's some documentaries out about the mountaintop removal stuff like coal country and everything.
There's a great documentary that was done, great in context. I mean, it's so tragic and so profound and moving. It's very hard to watch, but it's a very revealing documentary of the Buffalo Creek mine disaster.
Oh, really?
And it was done, I think, by the folks at Apple Shop in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
So if your listeners are there, you may want to Google Apple Shop Buffalo Creek mine disaster. In the meantime, I'll try to see if I can get you something personally and send you a contact so you can check that out.
Well, you can send us an instant message at WNJR Radio as our instant message handle on AOL. Okay. So history used to be that there was this oral history that was passed from generation to generation. A lot of times it was done through song.
Well, that was the original role of troubadour. That's the troubadour in its truest sense, which is somebody who would go from town to town and specifically write about a person or an event, and to sing that song and to pass that song along so those people and those events would not be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the true role of the troubadour.
There's a lot of great music down through Appalachia that was passed on through, I think, you ever see the song Catcher, I think was the name of it?
No, I have not, and I'm ashamed to say I have not, because you have to be the 15th or 20th person that has told me you've got to see that movie, and I haven't yet.
There's this, it's kind of this touchy-feely romantic thing going through, which is kind of, bear through that part, but the actual
the chick flick.
Yeah, that part of it. But the story, I didn't realize they found this one part of, there were these old Scottish and English ballads that came over and were still in Appalachia. These folks were singing, and they found somewhere, I think it was in North Carolina, I want to say, that they found this one town that very isolated from everyone else, and they still had these ballads that they were singing that were from the they were probably 1500s or something like that they were written.
Cool.
They brought them over when they came over, so it is.
I need to see the movie. I made light the joke, the chick flick thing, but honestly, so many people, Mitch, have told me I've got to see the movie, so I'm sure it's something I'd enjoy.
You would enjoy it. So there's such a rich cultural heritage that I mean, growing up even in Washington, Pennsylvania, my mom would tell me that we were in Appalachia. I remember her saying that.
Yeah, well, we are.
But
the Alleghenies, that's part of the Appalachian Mountain Range. So.
Yeah, but I never. I guess she was.
I don't think Western Pennsylvanians like to think of it in those terms.
I don't understand, because if you go down south to Morgantown, in that area, there are bluegrass musicians everywhere.
Yeah.
But you just come north a little bit, and where I don't know where they
Well,
are.
I think, the fact that western Pennsylvania was easily developed because of its rivers and relatively flat land. And, the Appalachia that I think we're talking about is in the mountains where, economic development is impossible. And the people that originally settled there, these Scottish people and these Irish people, the Scotch-Irish you were referring to, those were people who wanted to be away from development and wanted to be away from
and the independent streak.
Yes, exactly. Working the land, making, living off of the land and being completely independent, not only religiously, as was the desire of all American settlers, but also in every way, to be able to feed and clothe themselves and to build their own homes and not have to, be a slave to somebody, to work for somebody else. And then here in western Pennsylvania, of course, you had all of the steel mills that cropped up, and coal mines as well, but it was a different situation because the people who came here were looking for that. They were looking for that work to feed their families and that's the great irony and the sadness, I think, of Appalachia today, and particularly of West Virginia and Kentucky, is that when coal did get the foothold in that state, these people became slaves to the coal companies. And those are the people that wanted the exact opposite, and that's why they settled there. And there's always been a struggle, I think, between their identity as people who can do things on their own and live by themselves, and people who actually have become so dependent on
one particular industry.
Yes.
And well, it's no accident. I mean, the coal barons that they had back in the at the turn of the century, the late 1800s, 1900s, they did the same thing. They turned people against people, so they were fighting amongst themselves, and that's basically what by fighting amongst themselves, they weren't able to unite.
There's an incredible book by a guy named Kai Erickson. It's called Everything in Its Path. And it was written about the Buffalo Creek mine disaster. I keep coming back to that because I guess that's my mile marker as far as my understanding of all these things that we've talked about and that I sing about. It stems from that. But Everything in Its Path was written by Kai Erickson, who was hired by the victims' attorneys to evaluate the psychological state of these victims. And the book delves into this whole idea of who these people are, where they came from, why they settled in West Virginia and the mountains of Appalachia, and the impact of the coal industry on their psyche. It's an incredible book, and a lot of it's a funny thing growing up in West Virginia, up in the northern Panhandle. A lot of the people down in the coal fields don't even consider the northern Panhandle to be part of West Virginia.
Yeah.
But I actually found a lot of similarities in myself, personality traits that were described in that book, in my own family. It was a real eye-opener for me. Interesting book.
Well, it's interesting because my family history goes to Scots-Irish roots that came over back in the 1790s and settled down Lone Pine in the Amity, that area. It was from the CD,
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh's such a melting pot of so many different ethnic diversity. All the different neighborhoods that are there, and also Wheeling. I mean, I think of Pittsburgh, but I didn't spend a lot of time in Wheeling. But you have all these different areas, this ethnic diversity, and when I think of ethnic music, I think of this folk music tradition, and I just as far as passing that on to the younger generation that's coming up, that maybe it took me a while to find this kind of music, to find that music that had history attached to it,
Yeah.
As opposed to something you would hear on a classic rock station or something like that. And I think the difficulty is trying to pass that on in terms of legacy to the next generation, and that in a sense, a mission that I have, in terms of, I'm sure you feel the same way, is that just passing this music on.